So I have actually got the credentials to take care of Maidenhair Ferns and teach other people how to do it, because they are, right, they're not hard to look after, but you need to get certain things right. Because if they were hard to look after, mine would be dead. But mine got aphids. So I bought it, it didn't really grow. It didn't die, but it didn't really grow. Kept it in my kitchen. And then it got aphids and it was down to a single frond, like one tiny sad little frond. And now look, now it's not massive, but there's definitely more than one frond there. So I'm going to tell you how I did that with the weird changing light. It's going to absolutely hoy it down. So it looks a little bit raggy at the moment. Some of the fronds look a bit dark, but it's actually got spores on the backs of the leaves. Now this is a common thing that crops up in on Reddit subreddits. You can't really see it so well on the maidenhairs. You can maybe see a little bit of the see if I can find one. You see that? No, not really. So basically on some of the older fronds, they get weird, they look like eggs or bugs or something on the backs of the leaves, and they are the spores. They've got a funny name, which I can't be bothered to look up now. But yeah, that's just them reproducing. So you can't take cuttings or anything of ferns. You can divide them, but they tend to reproduce. But that's a good one. You see that? You can just see like little black dots on it. That's the spores. Once these things, this hasn't taken long, maybe 6 months to get like this. And it requires very little from me, and it just chucks out new fronds all the time. As I said in the beginning, the care for ferns in general is fairly similar, but there are some differences with maidenhair ferns and others. Maidenhair ferns are pickier if they don't get the right conditions, but once they do get the right conditions, they just grow and grow and grow, and it's fine. So first we're going to talk about light, because that I think is the biggest difference between maidenhair ferns and regular ferns. Regular ferns aren't that bothered about light. They live on the forest floor in, I say tropical conditions, like we have ferns in this country and it's not tropical here. So they come from a wide variety of environments, but they tend to be lower level. They don't climb and they won't do so well in exposed areas. You do get some that do okay, but yeah, in general, lower light. Dappled light's perfect, but obviously that's difficult to get, but they're pretty chill anyway. I mean, if there's no light at all, they'll die, because plants will, but they do pretty well in lower light. Maidenhair ferns, however, prefer not bright light, but bright indirect light. So mine lives on my bathroom windowsill, and that is south facing, but it's textured glass, so that gets rid of a lot of the strong rays. And there's there's a house-sized house that blocks a lot of the light as well. So it's sort of the epitome of bright indirect light, and that's what we're looking for with a maidenhair fern. Once you have the light in place, they're not as fussy about the other stuff as you might think. If the light isn't good, then your humidity and your water quality is going to really need to be up there. But if you give them enough light, they just grow and grow and grow. The next thing to consider is temperature. And with a lot of tropical plants, it's fairly straightforward. Like, they're okay in the house where it's fairly warm, but once it gets too cold, they'll die. And in general, if it's too cold for you to go out without a jumper on, it's probably too cold for your plant to be outside. And as I'm saying that, I'm just thinking about all my plants that are outside at the moment, probably freezing their tits off. Oops. I might bring them in later. But yeah, that's generally like the rule of thumb. But there are species of ferns, and including like maidenhair ferns, there's a lot of different types of maidenhair ferns that will do fine over winter outside. And by fine, I don't mean like the plant will be, like the leaves and stuff will be fine. They'll die back, but they'll die back and the roots will be fine and they'll grow back the next day. No, it won't. They'll grow back next year. Some maidenhair ferns come from quite high up in the Andes, so they'll be fine. In general, the ones you get in garden centres and that are sold in the houseplant trade aren't winter hardy, so I wouldn't recommend shoving them outside. However, you may see ferns in the wild that are doing well in colder climates. So there is a national fern collection, I say near where I live, it's in the Lake District, so it's like a couple of hours away. And they have, I want to say like hundreds of different types of ferns, and they do okay, like in fairly cold conditions. So whilst I wouldn't recommend putting your plant outside, I'm not saying that it won't survive or that ferns won't survive in colder climates, because they will. they will do better in cooler temperatures than really hot temperatures, just because they have very thin, delicate leaves and they'll scorch really easily, and all the water will, like, they'll dehydrate easily. So cooler rather than like boiling hot. But again, like, cosmetically you might burn a plant to a crisp, but the roots will probably be okay. They are, considering they're quite difficult to get growing looking well, they're quite hardy. Like, they might look like shit, but they're still alive and doing okay. From their perspective, they may just look a bit crap. So especially ferns, because they do grow quite quickly, you can see like this paler new growth. This paler like neon growth is newer, and then there's some older fronds that are browning. That's just natural. Like, they grow new fronds quickly, but they also shed old ones quickly. Looking around the bottom, this won't show up on camera, but you can see quite a lot of the new fiddle leaves, fiddleheads coming through. See, all I can see now is the spores, but they won't show up on camera very well. It's so annoying. Why won't that's so weird? Yeah, you can sort of see them right at the end there. Focus. It won't focus. Something that is important to ferns is humidity, but it's actually not as important as you might think that it is. And I think this is to do with like the hardiness of ferns. So ferns grow in many environments, and some are more humid and some aren't. In general, because they live on the forest floor where it's more humid, they can tolerate high humidity. But as I said, some live in more arid environments, so they aren't that fussed. And that is great for people that want plants in their bathrooms, because bathrooms are humid environments some of the day. They're not naturally humid, and they are quite cold, because they tend to be like tiled and they don't have many soft furnishings or anything in them. But I've found that ferns thrive in my bathroom, because my bathroom has a window in it. If your bathroom doesn't have a window in it, maybe avoid ferns or plants altogether. But the sort of intermittent, say there's like 2 showers a day going on or whatever in your bathroom, that's probably ample for a fern. They're just not that fussed. They like the boost of humidity, but they're not that fussed about the constant humidity that like a calathea might require. And I'm guessing this is all to do with just the general, it's not even that they're hardy, they're just chill. I think fern care is quite similar to peace lily care, in that once you've got the care sorted and the position sorted, they're pretty chill. But if you get it wrong, then they die they go downhill really quickly. Not necessarily die, but just look really pathetic and sad. And also there's a lot of conflicting advice as to how to care for them, and I think probably because they can thrive in a variety of different situations. But I found that giving them more light, the Maidenhair Ferns, giving them more light makes them more tolerant of other crappy things. You would think. So my general theory with water quality is that plants that need more water prefer to have water that is higher quality, like with fewer nasties in it, like chlorine, chloramide, that kind of thing. More succulent plants, they don't have the option to be picky about water because of where they live. Like, the water comes twice a year, and if they don't appreciate what it is, then they'll just die. So they can't afford to be as picky. Whereas plants that live in more tropical conditions or with heavier rainfall, they know more rain's coming, so they're going to be more picky about it. That's probably not the actual reason, but that is just what I've observed. Plants that require more water like it to be of a higher quality. I've not noticed that with ferns. Ferns tend to be pickier. Like I said, I water them with the aquarium water, but I'm not above flicking shower water at, especially this one. Like, they do not like to dry out. That is one thing about ferns, is they don't like to dry out. So Maidenhair Ferns are really picky about drying out. Boston ferns less so. Rabbitfoot fern. Oh my god. Rabbit's foot fern aren't that bothered, I don't think. Not that I've seen. Like, mine can take anything that I can throw at it. So yeah, most of the time this gets watered by, I'll just get some water and just flick it on, and it's doing well. So whilst I wouldn't advise giving it like gross water, and I wouldn't give it, like, I know some people water their plants with like grey water, which is water from like the bath and washing up bowls and stuff. I wouldn't recommend that. But also save your distilled and filtered water for your really picky plants, because ferns aren't that fussed about tap water. They also don't seem so bothered about water temperature. Mine gets warm water from the shower, obviously, and I have accidentally watered them a few times with cold water. and they're just not as fussy as a lot of plants. When I say don't let it dry out, it can be tempting to make sure the soil is wet all the time. And whilst the soil is damp, it's still well draining. And so mine is in this, like, it's a takeaway cup. So I'm like a bit of a eco-friendly hippie warrior type person. So I always get takeaway, like these, what are they called? Like reusable coffee cups for my birthday and Christmas. I never take coffee with me anywhere. But they're good for plant pots. So thanks, guys. So this is still in the pot that it came in, I think. It's certainly still in. I've not repotted it. Ferns aren't massive on being repotted. If you're gonna do it really gently. Don't like dislodge the soil from the roots or anything. Just keep it as it is and just sneak extra soil around the sides. So it will need drainage holes. It will need. This isn't well draining soil, but it's okay. But you will need drainage holes in the bottom. So you want the soil to be drying out quite quickly, and for you to be watering it quite often. What you don't want is the soil to stay wet for a long time without you adding more water, because that will lead to the soil losing oxygen and the plant getting root rot. So you want to be watering quite frequently, but you don't want the water to be like, the soil to be like sodden and muddy. It's just damp. Like, I can squeeze it and no water comes out, but it's still definitely like wet. It's really hard to describe, and I'm not going to lie to you, you might go through a couple of these before you sort of get what I mean. But yeah, in general, I just tend to flick water at mine every couple of days, and I just don't let the top of the soil dry out. And then every few weeks I will give it a good bottom water and let the soil get soaked. I wouldn't recommend particularly aerated soil. I would go for perlite as a soil additive rather than orchid bark, just because it won't appreciate, because the roots are so like intricate. They're not that bothered about big air pockets. They prefer like the smaller ones. So I would personally just leave it in the pot that it came in as long as possible, unless you think there's something really wrong with the soil, but in general they're pretty good. I've not actually tried to propagate ferns before, purely because the root systems are quite delicate, and I don't know, I'm too scared I'll kill it. They're cheap enough, I would rather just buy another one if I wanted another one, but I suppose I will have to try at some point. I don't know if it's possible to get them to do anything with their spores inside. I wouldn't have thought so, but please let me know if you know. It's so annoying. I can see all these spores on the thing, but they won't show up on camera. It's so frustrating. They look like little horseshoes on the back of the leaf. When it comes to the dead fronds, and they do die off, like I said, quite quickly, I just pick them off, but it won't hurt your plant if you leave them on. They just look, because they sort of die from the middle inwards, they can make your plant look really quite ill when the fronds start to die. So I just sort of pick them off as and when I can. When it comes to pests, right, I don't want to have to say this because I don't want to jinx it, but I will. I've never had thrips or spider mites on any of my ferns, but I have had aphids, and aphids, they're a pain. You'll know when you've got them. If you want to know if you've got them, look on the new growth on the fiddleheads, and they'll be covered in little black baby aphids, and they are a nightmare to get rid of, like an absolute nightmare. They do take a while. If you've got like a big fern, they do take a while to kill the plant, but oh god, they're a pain. The only thing I can suggest you do is keep spraying your plant with pest spray. I just use neem oil, washing up liquid and water, and picking off as many as you can. You can even just chop off the baby leaves, like the fiddleheads, as they come through. And it's devastating to do, but it's the only way to get rid of them, and they are such a pain. And they spread so easily to ferns, like they seem to seek out ferns. So just, if you have a plant with aphids, move your ferns far, far away into another room, because they will get them. They do like the new growth though. So if you've got something with, what are they called? Like rhizomes, like the rabbit's foot fern. Check the rhizomes, and they're often on there. That's what this one succumbed to. It was the aphids, but now we're doing well. So yeah, I hope that was helpful, and it will help you keep your maidenhair ferns alive. As I said, the main thing is that they really like more light than a normal fern. Your regular Boston fern would be more than happy in a north facing window, east facing window, or a brightish room. Like there's just not that, you know, I could put it back there and it would be happy as Larry. But these do require more light. Well, they don't require more light, but it makes the care so much easier and the growth so much faster if they have brighter light. Oh, and I just wanted to add about the not letting them sit in stagnant water for so long. Don't put them in too big of a pot because that can lead to root rot. Just because you want soil that will dry out quite quickly, and for you to keep moistening it with fresh water. You don't want it to be sat in the same water for a long period of time. So yes, that is all I have to say about ferns. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you next week. Thank you for watching. Bye.